Here we go. Booty and the crew exclusive interview. Welcome to the show. Let's have some fun. Sweep Unplugged starts now.
Hey, Sweep the League Nation, Rudy Campos Jr. here again for another Sweep Unplugged for you today. Be sure to go to our YouTube page. It's all you got to do is go to YouTube, search Sweep the League TV, hit that subscribe button so you get a lot of great content like Sweep Unplugged like we're going to have today. Also, you get the big show, Sweep the League TV, STL 316, making its comeback as well. Of course, it's WrestleMania week, so you know that STL 316 is dropping a whole lot of content for that, grading the market. Plus, don't forget, you also got I Am Refocused Radio Network. We're all being merged together, so it's all under the MCS General Contracting umbrella, the best in the business, MCS General Contracting today. What are we talking about today? So it's a great topic because it's something that we've touched on a lot when it comes to Sweep the League TV. It's myself, Derek Gervin. We've both have been through this before, and it deals with coaching, and not just coaching at the NBA level, not coaching at the college basketball level. It's coaching at that level where Derek and I have both said many times something has to change. Where is the disconnect? What went wrong? And you know what? We've got a great guest today here. We have Darren Ault. His book, Out of Bounds, is a fantastic book. You can definitely get a copy of it on Amazon or wherever books are available there. It's called Out of Bounds. We're going to talk to Mr. Ault here in just a second. But yeah, the disconnect between players today, coaches, it's gotten to the point where personally, you guys know my story. I gave up the coaching game because it was just not worth my time anymore. Let's get into a lot of that here in just a little bit with Mr. Darren Ault. Let's bring him onto the show, Sweep Unplugged. Mr. Ault, I appreciate you joining us here today on Sweep the League Nation and Sweep Unplugged. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Rudy. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to see you.
Awesome. I appreciate you being here again. Again, you can follow Sweep the League. Just go to YouTube, search Sweep the League TV, hit that subscribe button when you get more Sweep Unplugged. Sir, your book, Out of Bounds. Now, you were a coach for many, many years, and book Out of Bounds basically it's a story that you went through, and, you know, they got to get out there. They got to read the book to get the whole idea about it. But the inspiration behind the book here, was it super, super important for you to get that book written and out, you know, to let everybody know what's going on? Because there is a massive disconnect when it comes to our youth today and the coaches like you, myself, Derek, and other guys that have put so many years into building programs. That disconnect has to get out at some point.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's weaseling its way in deeper and deeper into the game, which is making it really difficult for coaches and players to have that unique relationship of mentorship, of development, not just in the game, but in things that involve life, you know, and throughout whatever sport you're playing or coaching, there are lessons there that do transcend the game and are meaningful to later on. And, you know, I noticed over the last 10 or 12 years of my coaching that those negative engagements with parents were becoming more frequent, more hostile, and just taking people to levels that you would not even expect especially in youth sports, right? Because that was the frustrating part for sure.
Yeah, the disconnect, you know, one of the biggest disconnects is you brought up parents, and that was one particular reason, and there was a lot of them, but for me personally, my personal experience was the parents. It went from, here's my son, here's my daughter, you know, they're gonna listen to you, everything like that. And kids always did. You know, if you were serious about a sport, especially you talk about basketball, you're serious about basketball, they listened to you. They wanted to learn. The very first time when I started coaching AAU basketball, I had a mom come up to me, says, "This is my son." And this was before the whole social media, you know, shebang and everything, which that's a whole nother topic. We'll get into a little bit here, but she literally comes up, and her son at the time was 6'1", and she goes, "I expect him to play in the NBA. I told him he needs to play in the NBA." I said, "Okay, I can't guarantee anything." I said, "All I can guarantee is he'll get playing time on this team, but I can't guarantee anything." She says, "No, I expect that for him." Well, come to find out, looking at her son play, there was no talent there whatsoever. And I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out what she was saying. That was my first experience with parents. And then after that, it was, you are not coaching my son right. You are not doing this right. Why is my son only playing 10 minutes a game? And to the point where I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. What, as a coach coming in, what are the expectations for coaches now? Because I mean, parents just seem to be the driving force behind everything where a coach has to take the back seat to what a parent says.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in the high school realm, that's backed up by the administration. They're just, they're
Yeah.
there putting in time, weak and feckless, don't want to help drive a culture of success through coaches and teachers, et cetera. But yeah, I think parental expectations have gotten worse. A lot of it has to do with, you mentioned social media. So there's that instant exposure, instant
Mm,
gratification element, and then immediately off of that is the competition. I need to be as good as that person, or I want to be as good as that person,
yeah.
and that's okay if you're willing to put in the work and effort to hone your skills. Go for it. But at the end of the day, the reality and the reality check is that less than 1% of boys become NBA players. Less
Mhm.
than 1% of girls become WNBA players. And so it's not a bad thing to reach for the stars, but you should also be more in tune with the game and the development. What does it mean to be a team player, not just a me player? But that charge for scholarships, that charge for NIL money now, the charge to be in the pros, and I think as parents we have the potential of putting a lot of undue pressure on our kids to where they are missing the joy of the game, of competing, of learning how to work together with somebody else.
Yeah, we are talking to Darren Ault, author of Out of Bounds. You can get it wherever books are sold, especially on Amazon. Just hit up Amazon right now. Go get Out of Bounds. It's a great, great book here. We're going to be giving away a copy later on in the week here from Sweep Unplugged. So be sure to be entered into any giveaway that we are doing. And we are talking about, coaching right now, the coaching situation, with coaching. And we mentioned social media. And
Mhm.
the whole thing with social media is it was already getting bad at the point. Now you've got social media where, I mean, your kid is a star whether he can play or she can play or can't play. You see the fights between parents and referees. You see the referee's job, which was already tough
Yeah.
as it is, just became a million times tougher because not only do you have to worry about, back then, the coach is yelling at you, and that's pretty much all you had. You had a few player interactions. Now you got to watch your back for the coach, the assistant coaches, the players are coming after referees, the parents are coming out from stands and getting in the referee's face. It's like, Pandora's box is just opened, and now it's kind of a free for all on the scene here. Social media part, how big of a factor is that playing into the issues that we're seeing at the lower level? I mean, we're talking high school level, AAU level right now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not playing the positive role that it could potentially play, right? By
Mhm.
shining a light on some of these issues and kind of reminding people, hey, this is not the way to act. But
Yeah.
social media seems to be centered around train wrecks. So
Yeah.
it's exciting to sit there and scroll through things like you said, a parent running out of the stands and accosting a ref or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's become the entertainment of today, which is sad. It's a really, really sad statement on our culture. Um, but
Yeah.
I do think it plays a part in it. And even the kids during practice, they, once we blow the whistle for them to take a water break or something, they go running over to the bag and want to see what the last thing is or take a few pictures or something like that. And it's just, where is your focus? Where is your drive to what we're here to do for that day? And listen, I used to talk to my parents all the time prior to the season that I will give the refs a hard enough time during the
Mhm.
game, within the boundaries of the coach ref
Yeah.
relationship. Please do not add to it from the stands because all this is going to do is make my job harder, right? If you may say something that gets me a T, well, that's not really fair, and it's also a distraction to your son or daughter who are now not only trying to focus on the game but are listening to you act up in the stands.
Yeah, that, and that's the crazy part is coaching. And I like I said, I give it up probably, man, it's probably been at least 10 years since I've given it up. So it's been a while.
Mm,
And Derek, still coaches right now, but him and I talk, and he constantly tells me, he's like, man, I got this one kid. his mom will come after me after every game and, kind of ask me this and get on my case for this. And it's tiring. And like I said, to hear a former NBA player who's coached, a lot after his NBA days
Yeah.
say that, it's heartbreaking, because which kid wouldn't want a guy that's already made it, that less than 1% guy, to make it to the league? Who
Yeah.
doesn't want you to coach them? I mean, that's a perfect coach right there to have. But nonetheless, it's getting kind of bad as it is. NIL is a whole nother thing, because now NIL, where it's at college, it's technically at the AAU level, if you think about
Yeah.
it, because AAU, from when I was growing up, was, it's teams competing, it's, going out of town to compete in tournaments. Now it's a whole big spectacle. I mean, you've got, teams with 5 different jersey, styles, 10 different travel bags, and, they're getting the full class, NBA treatment. So that's just kind of trickling down everywhere. We are talking to Darren Ault, author of Out of Bounds here. You can get it on Amazon, wherever books are available. Great copy. We're going to be giving away a copy here on Sweep Unplugged of Out of Bounds. Speaking of the book, Mr. Ault,
Yeah.
the inspiration, to write the book, parental influences, coaching, the pressures faced by young athletes. Can you kind of talk to the audience about that, the inspiration for writing Out of Bounds?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for asking. I did have the pleasure of coaching for 33 years, from young men at college prep to young boys, 7th and 8th grade, to finally to high school girls, where I spent 22 years coaching in New Jersey. And it was a switch I made that I would never go back to. I loved coaching girls. I love coaching all kids, but there was just something special about coaching the young ladies who oftentimes were not confident in their own abilities, and there's a lot of psyche struggle that you had to work through as a coach too. And it just formed some really great relationships. But through all those experiences, I started to notice a trend over time that these conflicts that we're talking about were becoming more frequent and more hostile. And I started to wonder why. What is it that's really driving this parent to act this way, to come to somebody? There was 12 years in my career where I was a volunteer coach. I wasn't getting paid or anything, but I was devoting my own personal time to coach young boys in 7th and 8th grade and having a great time with it. But what would drive a parent to go after somebody like that, unless there was some kind of physical harm or mental anguish caused by a coach on a player? But I did notice this trend happening about 10 years before my last year coaching. I just started to kind of jot down thoughts, like outline almost, like what were some of these experiences where, as I sub-labeled it on my book, where parents cross the line between the player-coach relationship, and kind of what was the crux behind it and how did it work out. And Rudy, I didn't want it to be all negative. First of all, these are a handful of incidents throughout hundreds of people that I had, and thousands of people that I got to engage throughout my career, 99% of which were positive, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to share them in an honest way to maybe shine some light on it, to maybe hold a mirror, to where we hold a mirror to ourselves, whether we're the parent or the player or the coach or the administrator, and just create a situation where we kind of do some self-evaluation. Is this really something I need to get this angry about? And a lot of those incidents has worked out really well in the end, but there was that struggle to find the common ground, which you think would be pretty simple, because when it all comes down to it, the parent and the coach both have the charge of trying to challenge and develop their child, just in different ways.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of joint effort, and you'd think there'd be a lot more harmony and cooperation in that effort.
Yeah, I totally agree on, all that you said. And it brings me to my next, question here for you, because as a coach, where this is the part that I look at. You see a child struggling, you see a child get frustrated. And you know what? Being a player, as a lot of us are, we were players at one point as well. We get frustrated. A lot of times I was frustrated at myself because I knew my mistakes. I made my mistakes. I got yelled at back in the day, which now, a coach yelling at a child is like not even happening. I used to have the Bobby Knight treatment sometimes, and it was like, hey, but again, my mom and dad understood that's the game of basketball. You have a coach that cares that much and is passionate, you're going to succeed. But at what point is it, okay, as a coach, you've got your player, you've got your parents, who drives the car more these days, because I always feel that I've seen, when I've gone to tournaments, I've gone to my daughter's tournaments and I've gone to my daughter's games, sitting in the stands watching them. I feel it's the parents in the child's ear before the game while they're doing shoot around. I've seen that crazy at halftime, just on the court talking to their kid. And it's like, is it so much the kid's fault, or is it the parents driving this car, putting everything into the kid's ear, and then the kid turns on the coach? How is that determined right there? Is it more parent? Is it more kid?
I think it definitely starts with the parent, because they're ultimately responsible for their
Mhm.
child and the child development. And I think it starts before they even get in the car. I would call it the dining room table,
Yeah.
where it used to be. I know when I was growing up, if I said something about this teacher or that coach, my mom would sometimes say, "Well, what are you doing? What's your role in this?" And try teach me about accountability. And I don't think that happens today. I think it's more, I'm complaining about coach at my kitchen table. Yeah, he kind of sucks, and they emphasize that it's the coach, not you. It's the coach or the teacher, not the lack of preparation or effort that you as a child are putting in. And so that support for educators and for authority figures outside the home is often melted before they even get in the car. I think it's exacerbated when they get in the car, especially after a game. And I've seen this where parents are just berating their kid because they only got 8 points today, or 10 points, or didn't shoot enough. And it's all about what they didn't do, and it's all about through the lens of them, as opposed to the things that they did do, the contributions they did make. The
Mm.
positive thing, the diving on the ground for a loose ball, the stopping the opponent's best scorer, or holding them to only 6 or 10 points as opposed to giving them the 20 that they averaged. The great pass that you made to your teammate so that she could score a bucket. That kind of stuff is just so far overshadowed, and it has a lot to do, with the AAU concept now. That's all about trying to become a superstar.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned all the money that's poured into it. So the connection to the high school coach gets eroded, even though college coaches are often talking to us, are often asking us about things off the court. How do they act in school? How do they act with their teammates? How do they act in the locker room? Which
Yeah.
is not, you can't get that in an AAU season.
Yeah, it's funny because I brought up a point recently on a show where I think AAU just needs to go away and kind of reformat the entire thing. Where you mentioned team basketball, coach playing for a team. I've always felt now AAU basketball needs to get away from where it currently is and transformed into actual school basketball. So if,
Yeah.
for example, I went to Central Catholic High School in San Antonio. If we're traveling in the summer, it's not AAU basketball. It's our entire team as a team with our coach going to this tournament in Vegas, going here, going there. I think the AAU basketball scene just needs to go away. It just needs to go back to being athletics where schools continue to stay together. To me, that grows that team as one. You become a better team, your coach, you understand your coach. Everything just stays in sync because, again, like you mentioned, I go play for, San Antonio Elite. Well, I'm getting coached a different way. I'm getting, brought up a different way. There may be guys on that team that are, way better than me that don't really care about my development. But if I stick with my own school team and continue to travel with them, then you're continuing to develop as one. And that's where I feel the biggest changes need to be made in AAU basketball. We are talking to Mr. Darren Ault, Out of Bounds, available on Amazon or wherever books are available. Again, we will be giving away a copy of Out of Bounds here to one of our lucky listeners here at Sweep Unplugged. The role of the administration, because you don't really see that too much. Now in AAU, you can definitely say, well, it's the organizers, it's the tournament directors. But when it comes to actual school basketball, has the role of administration been kind of just diminished? Because it seems like when we get these incidents and these altercations, the administration is nowhere to be found. And I've even seen that recently last year when my daughter played a game at her school and there was an incident, a really bad incident. the administration kind of got involved in a negative way during the game. So I don't know where that disconnect is. The administration part for you, Mr. Alt, does is it something that again it's an outside thing where we're not getting help from administration and it's just left on the coaches? Because it seems like everything's left on the coaches these days.
Yeah, I don't think the administration role has diminished or lessened in importance. I think the
Mhm.
people that are in those roles are not accepting the responsibility of
Yeah.
leadership, the accountability to their job and to the constituents they serve. And those constituents are not just the students, but the faculty, both full-time faculty and what they call it here in New Jersey, Schedule B people like myself who are,
Mhm.
not employed by the school other than for a coaching purpose.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely, and I outline a lot of it in my book because that was the circumstance that kind of broke the back of my coaching career, or the desire in me to continue to coach at the high school
Mhm.
level. Um, they just ran away from an incident, ran away and hid, punted, whatever you want to say. Nobody would stand up and own the leadership portion of figuring out. And for those who haven't read the book yet, I was falsely accused of inappropriate touching of a player who wasn't even directly on my varsity team. And she wasn't saying that I touched her. She was accusing me of touching two other people who they and their parents absolutely refuted that. There's no way, it didn't happen. We have no issues with Coach Ault. But the administration just disappeared. They ran away. And that left me in a really bad spot for 40 days without any kind of due process, without any kind of protection of my rights, without any kind of conversation, presentation of evidence, nothing. I was floundering for 40 days. And the biggest part of it was the, I don't really fault the athletic director because he'd only been in that role for about 2 weeks. So he, obviously wasn't going to be very useful. But the principal didn't do his part, did not step up and support holistically everybody involved and try to lead through it. And the administration was just in an absolute state of chaos. Weren't following their own policies. It was just a mess. And there I was, and my coaching staff, who were equally impacted by this, left floundering on the sidelines in what was a season of promise for something we'd been building for 4 years at Homedale High School in New Jersey.
Yeah, and it's weird you mentioned policies. Policies are in place for situations, that arise, for other situations that come up. And if you're not following those policies, what is the reason for having them there? I mean, that's a crazy situation. Talking to Darren out of bounds, again, available on Amazon or wherever books are available. Writing the book itself, I have to ask that because again, I haven't read it just yet, but I am in the midst of reading it. I do have my copy here. And the thing is, the challenges of writing a book. Now, what you were being accused of, what you just mentioned a second ago here, sitting down and writing about that, what is the challenge of that right there? Because again, painting the picture of a great coach like yourself in that way, and then again, kind of just feeling the burden of everything because you didn't have the support of administration, the principal, or anything like that. What were the challenges of writing your book?
The challenges around that particular incident were multiplied because obviously there's a lot of emotion and stress having gone through that. And when I finally got to writing the book, that was about 2 years in the rearview mirror. But it was the first time I could really start to just sit down and articulate and share, or at least try to share, the stress and strain and stay true to the facts and the circumstances around it. There was a good period for the 2 years leading up to that where there wasn't a day that didn't go by that I was thinking about that particular circumstance, even though I wasn't coaching anymore. Coaching was a true passion of mine. And I loved working with youth and people and helping them find the potential within and bringing it out and helping them understand the concepts of teamwork. So the emotions and the stress behind that was probably the biggest challenge around that piece of the book. The rest of it was really kind of even though it was about a very touchy subject and a very honest look at this parental interference, it was fun. It was fun to kind of go back and remember the circumstances 24, 25 years ago around a 7th and 8th grade team that went undefeated for the first time ever and won a league championship, and the boys and their expectations and how they came together. And within all that fun, there was this one circumstance. So I would share it and kind of tie it together. And by all means, I'm not trying to I did not try to hammer anybody through this or just make this a negative book. I wanted people to see the lessons that were learned through each one of these circumstances. And in some ways, right, I empower my reader to learn what you want out of these. And hopefully it's positive. Hopefully it's all positive.
We are talking to Darren Ault here, Out of Bounds, a great book that's going to be available on Amazon and wherever books are available. We are going to be giving away a free copy of Out of Bounds. That way you can read about the story behind Mr. Darren Ault here and struggle that he went through, but also on the positive side of things. Like he mentioned in his book, the thing with coaching is you are coaching there to develop players, but also you are there to be a positive influence in their lives as well, because that's the biggest thing that I always took away from coaching was not so much can I make you a better player, it's can I make you a better person, all around. That's always been my motto as a coach. Normally what we do at the end of the show, Mr. Ault, is we like to have a little fun here. So let me play a little bit of music here because we tend to go with a little rock theme here. We always do our top 5 at the end of the show right here. And for you, you're a coach, basketball coach. We've got, that bit of a background here. And I got to know, give me your top 5 all-time coaches at any level. Could be inspiring coaches to you, could be coaches that you just love to, kind of take a little bit here and there from their coaching style, but your top 5 all-time coaches.
Well, I am a big fan of Mike Krzyzewski, and I don't know who couldn't be. He's although he went to Army and I went to Navy, I don't hold it against him. But I love his principles and the whole teaching concept. Tom Izzo from Michigan State is somebody who I really appreciated and tried to replicate. Who else did I have? Steve Bradley, who used to coach at Butler. He was really impactful in my time when I had undersized teams and trying to figure out how to work against girls that were 6'4", 6'5". Those were, and then Coach Boeheim certainly for Syracuse, because I definitely adapted and played with a lot the 2-3 zone and some other variations. So that's 4. And then I'd like to give a nod to a gentleman who actually ended up being a volunteer coach of mine for the last couple of years at Homedale. We call him Pop. His name's Bob. But he and I coached against each other for many years in the 7th and 8th grade boys league. And he coached a 7th grade only team in a league that had 7th and 8th grade boys. And the level of inspiration and commitment that he drew out of his boys defensively, but playing together and playing sometimes outmatched. I just admired that. And it was one of the reasons we became friends. And it's one of the reasons he ultimately joined my staff, was to help bring that to my girls.
Awesome. You got the top 5 there. And, I will say this, you have Mike, Coach K there. I'm one guy who can raise my hand and say, I respect the guy, but I can't love the guy, being that, I'm a Tar Heel. So it's kind of hard to go that route there. So I got to put Dean Smith a little bit over Mike Krzyzewski right there. But nonetheless, that was a great top 5 there. People always ask me the same question sometimes, and they're surprised to know that I picked guys like Butch Beard from back in the day. And they're like, how do you know about that guy? I was like, well, I read his book, his coaching books. One of the reasons why I got into coaching back when I was a kid. So yeah, there's a lot of great coaches out there. Mr. Ault, I appreciate you joining us here today on Sweep Unplugged. If you got any last words for Sweep the League Nation out there, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time and the energy behind the interview. And I do offer up to anybody the opportunity to read this book. As Rudy had mentioned, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are available. It is my story through the lens of basketball, but I do believe it transcends that into life, into interactions you may have with family or coworkers. And I hope you get positive things out of it. And I do also do a podcast called Outside the Coach's Box with my son. It's just the 2 of us. He happens to be a Duke guy, Rudy, sorry.
Oh man.
But it's the 2 of us talking sports, just having fun, doing quirky things, and I encourage everybody to jump on that as well for some fun.
Awesome. Talking to Mr. Darren Ault, Outside the Box podcast. We're gonna be sharing that for you out there, so that way our listeners can definitely take a listen to y'all's podcast. And I'm not gonna be rude about it. I respect Duke players and Duke people that like love Duke. So I'll respect them on that. But no worries. We're gonna share that out for you. Out of Bounds is available. Again, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are available. We're gonna be giving away a free copy of it from Sweep Unplugged here. So you can definitely get a copy. All you gotta do is follow us on YouTube at Sweep the League TV. Hit that subscribe button. We'll get one of our subscribers here to get a free copy of the book. So again, appreciate everybody joining us here on Sweep Unplugged for Mr. Darren Ault. It's Rudy Campos Jr. Until we unplug from the sports world and go back to Sweeps Unplugged, talk to you about life lessons and everything underneath that sun. This is Rudy Campos Jr. We will see you later, knuckleheads.